So part of what I learned was the Braille. I called it the Braille method of sight reading, where you can't look at your hands. You don't have time. Because if you look at your hands, you look down, then you miss the conductor's cue, or you're missing something on the music. So the keyboard has the 2 and 3 black keys. Of course, we all know that. But there are a couple of components that I learned. One is we can depend on our muscle memory. So when I start a student from scratch, I have them sit at the piano and not look at their hands and find middle C. Put their hands back in their lap, find middle C. And they're amazed that they can do it. And then you can have them find the 5-finger position in C major. And again, they're pretty amazed they can do it. So I'm going to ask some volunteers to try these things with me. That's the first part of muscle memory. The other is, let's say you are sight reading and you're not sure where E is. You've got to jump and you've got to find E. We do know there's a gap between E and F. So if we bump into the E flat key, that's where E is. If we bump into the F sharp key, that's where F is. So we can use these, that's why I was calling it a Braille method. We can use these Braille methods to find our way around the keys when we're not 100% sure. Because we know what 2 black keys feel like, and we know there's the gap. So that's the start. Of course, if you run it down, there's also the knowledge of theory. You have to know where your hands are going at any given time, where a 1 chord is, a 4 chord, a 5/7 chord, a 1 chord. You've got to know that feeling of that. We learn that, I think, in level 1 CM technique, they learn that. So, okay, that's kind of like a quick overview of what I'd like to cover. But before I start, and before I call up a volunteer, I want to ask you guys what questions you have. What areas of sight reading can I help you with? No? Nobody has a question? You just want me to start? Okay, so the first lesson would be the muscle memory. Let's just find where middle C is. Like, who wants to be a volunteer? Oh, okay, I'm going to pick somebody, so just volunteer. Okay, Shin, you're up. Shin graciously volunteered. She's going to do it. Isn't it? She's a brave soul. Okay. Now, I don't need people to purposely make mistakes, because a lot of this stuff you already inherently know, and you might be surprised how much you know. Okay, so Shin, you're looking at the music here, and I'm going to ask you to keep your eyes here. By the way, for a beginner student, if I'm having them find middle C, every time they get it right, I give them a candy. So they'll do anything for you.
I have a candy today.
Right, yeah. And if they don't get it right, let's say they hit a D instead, I always just say, that was really close. You're almost there. Now, what do you have to do? Just adjust a little bit, okay? So, are you comfortable on your bench? Yeah? Okay, so could you, just looking at the pretend music, can you find middle C with your right hand? You're not allowed to go. Okay, so look here. Yeah, and now play the middle C. Yeah, you're not allowed to go. The thing is, okay, I do believe in the component of seeing, seeing your hands below you without actually looking at them, right? So the peripheral vision is part of sight reading. So now put your hand back in your lap, and can you play middle C for me? Play it. Yeah, good job. Now do it with your left hand. Excellent. You got it. You're going to get a candy for sure. I should have brought I did. I brought jelly beans. Okay. Play middle C. Good. That was excellent. You see there is that, she's got this muscle memory, and kids do too. It's incredible. Okay, I'm going to ask you to look here and play a C major position. C in both hands, down an octave with your left hand. Oh wait, put your hands back in your lap. Yeah, so it's going to be the C major 5-finger position. So your left hand pinky here and your thumb. Okay, hands back in your lap. Here we go. You looked. Okay, you don't get the candy. No, look here though, because there is the
Look at that.
Yeah, but the peripheral vision is part of what students are learning to utilize. So if you're looking here, that's important. Okay, can you play the C's? Good. Put your hands in your lap and play C. See, she's got it down, right? And it's amazing how soon kids can learn that muscle memory. Tell me, how many people have to watch their feet when they walk down the stairs. Like, some people are being very careful. Yes, I understand. But in general, kids do not have to look at their feet because they've got their muscle memory. This is the same thing, only with your hands. So that, I would say, is the first thing, and it really develops a little bit of confidence for kids. Because now they know they've got muscle memory. Now we're going to be teaching their individual fingers. So I do teach 5-finger position reading so they get comfortable, and I also want to incorporate the theory of it, that 5-finger patterns are in fact triads with passing tones. I'm always surprised in CM that they don't include the study of passing tones, escape tones, non-chord tones, double neighbors, upper neighbor, lower neighbor, until advanced level. So I start this at the very, very beginning, so they can feel the outline of a triad, and the non-chord tones I call icky notes. Now, icky notes, that's just because kids like things that are icky, right? Disgusting, the more disgusting it is, the more they can visualize it, the more they enjoy it, right? So, well, if you're playing a 5-finger pattern, now if we're looking here, a C major 5-finger position, I'm only going to use you for a couple more examples because you were so kind to volunteer, and then I'll pick another volunteer. Okay, so if we're reading in this middle C position, by the way, don't look at your hand. Oh, also, I don't ever say don't. I don't say don't, because so many kids feel fear when they sight read. They're not my students, but other people's students, I notice, are fearful when they're sight reading. So I never want them to have the element of fear. I want them to laugh at themselves when they make a mistake, roll on the floor laughing at how bad it sounded because they were just messing it up. But I want them to enjoy it. So instead of saying, don't look at your hands, I just say, keep your eyes glued up here. Keep your eyes glued. Now put your hand, keep your eyes glued. For the candy, both thumbs on middle C. For candy, come on, you can do it. Yeah. And even if you miss it, you just say, wow, you just missed it by one note. That's amazing. Try it again and again and again. The more times they do it, the more their muscle memory kicks in. Okay, so I just picked some of these examples from the sight reading book that we used for CM, and I pulled them together. What I want to talk about is the non-chord tones. So we know that in C major, the triad notes are C, E, G, but the non-chord tones are D and F. So how do you teach that to a kid? Dead fish, or fish that are dead, right? They love it. It's disgusting. So now what they have to look at is, in the first example, I circled that passing tone. You can see that it's a C major descending triad in measure 2, and there's a fish note in the middle, right? So it's a passing tone. I don't even talk about it being fish. Not yet. Because icky notes really come into play, first of all, when you're in an uncomfortable position like D minor, something, or G major where your left hand's off by a note, and when we put hands together. Because opposite icky notes use the same finger. So that really, it becomes very valuable. So in this case, we're just looking at a descending C major triad with a passing tone. And if you include the right hand, middle C at the end of measure 2, all the way through measure 3, you've got a tetrachord. And then, of course, you're ending in a tetrachord. So I always ask kids, please analyze what you're seeing. A triad with a passing tone, descending tetrachord, ascending tetrachord, and then I say, now play it by memory. Because they understand what they're playing, right? Not only sight reading, but grasping what the content of what they're looking at is, and being able to play it without even looking at it anymore, right? Okay, are you ready to play it by memory?
Memory, okay.
Okay, so now, one thing I always incorporate is the counting. I'm sure you all do that too, because if they learn how to count from the very beginning, they can count when it's really complex, right? Okay, my dear, you can do it. Count out loud, louder. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Count louder. 4, 1, 2. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, that was lovely, wasn't it? That was the most musical rendition of this I've ever heard. Okay, I'm going to get another volunteer. Come on. If you're not volunteering, I'm gonna. Okay, Monica, you're up. Okay, we talked about passing tones and triads, we have escape tones. So now, if you're looking at example number 2, you can see that it is a tetrachord, and often I'll just take my pencil and cover that note and I'll say, look, what is it? And they go, a tetrachord. And this note ran away. What is an escape tone? It's a note that says, I don't want to go to bed. And it runs away, and you have to chase after the kid, pull him, plop him in bed. So that's what escape tone is. Or I don't want to take a bath, right? Something where they run away, and then they have to go there anyway. So that's what's happening here. But now what do we have? We have 3 descending notes, and then an ascending triad with a
Escape tone.
and it's a tetrachord with an escape tone. Exactly right. Now, Monica, keep your eyes up here because I've got candy. I want you to find the C major 5-finger position. Keep your eyes up here. You can do it. I believe in you. Yeah. And your left hand as well. You can do it. Very good. Now, if you couldn't find it, you can always feel this little gap between between the black keys, right? The 2 white keys between the C and the B. Bump into the C sharp with your pinky, and there you go. Right? That's what I call the Braille method, because if you're not sure, and your job is on the line, and they're paying $10,000 an hour for this studio or whatever it is, and you can't miss that C, then you bump it, you slide between the 2, and you bump into C sharp. Now you got the C. Phew, I made it. All right? Okay, now we're going to count out loud with the phrasing. You're doing great. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
And float off at the end of the slur. 2, 3, escape, and you finally reach your destination. Excellent. Okay, good. Now, as you're looking at the following examples, you're doing such an excellent job. The next position, F position, is not so hard because your left hand's still in middle C position. So why don't you put your left thumb on middle C without looking? Good. By the way, I should have said keeping your eyes glued up here. I'm correcting myself. And then your right thumb, find F by sliding between the 2 white keys. There, bump into, there you go. Now the icky notes, so the F major triad, could you play an F major triad for me, please?
Which hand?
Both hands. Okay, and you can do broken, you can do it block. So the icky notes are G and B flat. So, I don't know, I came up with gross flat bananas, but you can come up with whatever you like. But I just think gross flat bananas are gross enough, they're disgusting enough, the kids will remember it, right? Now, the beauty of that is if you're playing hands together, so G and B flat are with 2nd and 4th fingers. Could you play G in your left hand? That's gross. So flat bananas in the right hand will also be the same 4th finger. Flat bananas. Play them both, gross and flat bananas. G in the left hand, B flat in the right hand. They're both the same finger. Now, B flat in the left hand and G in the right hand, they're both 2nd fingers. So opposite icky notes, flat bananas that are gross, use the same finger, right? Okay, all of this is trying to make sight reading fun and enjoyable. You can't do this unless you're really addressing theory a lot, because theory and your technique will all add up to the sight reading. Okay, so now that's the F major position. If you're looking at this example, Miriam, can you analyze that one? Number 3, just tell me what it is.
So it's a descending triad
with
after that it's a major 5-finger pattern,
right,
major,
and
then the right hand is a ascending triad
and
with
5.
major 5-finger pattern.
Perfect. Can you play by memory? Close your eyes now, please, my dear, and count.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Float off.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, that was very nice. The right hand was going the opposite direction, but that was fine because you were doing the imitation. Okay, but thank you so much for your wonderful, thank you. Okay, now you can go back to your seat. What
Where's
I
my
do?
candy?
Yeah, it's coming. I've got jelly beans, yes. Okay, so now I don't think I need volunteers to sight read number 4, but I do want you to see that it is in the G major position. So the opposite icky notes, or the icky notes, are A and C. I couldn't come up with anything gross with A and C except Imagine the first time you turn your air conditioning on in the summer, if instead of cold air, green slime came oozing out of it all over your head. The minute you cause somebody to have that imagery, they really never forget it. Now that helps tremendously when we're playing chords and hands together. So the next position is D minor. So you can see, I actually circled the non-chord tones. I didn't label every single non-chord tone. You can see passing tones and things like that. But in D minor, the icky notes are E and G, because the triad's DFA, so E and G are the icky notes. So E and G, it spells egg. So imagine if you have some rotten eggs in your fridge. That would smell disgusting, right? The more gross it is, the more kids will remember. E minor, if you look at number 6, we're in the E minor position. The opposite icky notes, or the icky notes, are F sharp and A. Why is that? Because E minor is E, G, B. F sharp A. I don't know if you can come up with anything more disgusting than fishy apples. And I always say, here, have a taste of this delicious fishy tasting apple. So once kids think of fishy apple, they can't forget it. I didn't talk about A minor quite, but I was asking my students, I had 2 students who have 3 dogs, and they said they're always picking up their poop, their doggy doo-doo. So for A minor, it's B and D. What's more disgusting than brown doo-doo, right? I have a big dog, I have to pick up his brown doo-doo. That's gross. Or doo-doo that's brown, right? So kids remember that. Those are your icky notes. Now, I'm going to ask for a volunteer for number 7. Because, yes, Nara. Miss Nara. Okay. Number 7 is the first time that we're addressing hands together. 5-finger position. Okay, sweetheart, you have to look at the music and put your hands on the keys. Excuse me. No candy for her. Right. Okay. Hands on the keys. There you go, finding C. Right, now if you can't find C, just do this, right? Between the B and C, bump into C sharp, and you've got it. It's a great trick, I'm telling you, it saved my life. It's so simple, but I have never seen that in a sight reading book, ever. Just slide between, bump into the, the B flat key, now you got B. Bump into the F sharp key, now you got F, right? But that's for like if you're jumping like this, and you jump back, and you're not sure you jumped enough, or you jumped too far, right? Okay, so this is the C major position, but it's hands together. And I circled the opposite icky notes, right? So you can see the first measure is a C major triad with a passing tone. And then measure 2, we have dead fish. So if you have dead in your left hand with the 4th finger, then fish in your right hand is also 4th finger. You don't have to think about both hands. Doesn't that help? Does that help? I think it helps, right? And then once you do dead fish, both hands go up a second, so that's easy, and both hands come down a third. Left hand in measure 3, down a triad with a passing tone. Okay, and then you've got an upper neighbor, right? Can you see? In measure 3, beat 3, it's an upper neighbor, right? Because you have G, F, E, C, and then upper neighbor is D, C, right? So upper neighbor, you just go up and right back down, right? Lower neighbor, you play the note, you go down and come right back up. Double neighbors, you do below and above and to the note. By the way, just before you play. Okay, here's an E, here's a lower neighbor. Here's lower neighbor, upper neighbor, double neighbors around the C. And here's an A. I just played an A minor triad. So it's an E, lower neighbor, E, double neighbors around the C, and A. Does that sound familiar? A little. Yeah, it's an A minor triad. You guys could laugh a little. I mean, really, you're like so straight-faced. Okay, so now we're going to play this one with both 4th fingers on dead fish, both 2nd fingers on fish that are dead. Okay, and we've got staccatos, we've got slurs with floats, with forte, piano, we've got a lot of things. So I don't think kids have the time to look down at their hands with all of that to observe, do you? How many of you have students that look at their hands when they're sight reading? How many of you have students that try to convince you that they have to look at their hands? Yeah, okay. So now we're going to count. So we have to subdivide. Okay, here we go. Okay, somebody was peeking. Okay, but that's a good way to handle it, right? Okay. So, one thing I forgot to mention that I really love that she was doing is singing. So before you actually play it, it's wonderful to get the kids to sing their example. And if you start them really young and they know no better, and if they're shy singers, you sing along with them. Right? And solfege is a fantastic tool to start at the beginning as well. I do the movable do, so whatever key you're in is your do. Okay, now we have number 22 now. This example starts teaching them how to apply their chord progressions from their CM exam, right? If you're doing the 1, 4, 5, 7, 1, right? So I want them always to be aware of their common tones and their voice leading. So common tone just means what note is in common from one chord to the next. Voice leading is what is the closest note to that next chord in that voice. I also like them to think of every note as a member of a choir or a string ensemble, something. So the bottom note is like whatever, it's the bass, the tenor, the alto, whatever, and this left hand part. So the bass, you don't move it if it doesn't have to. And so in this first example, we're in D major, so the bass, D F sharp A, gets to stay on D when you're going to G, B, D, because it doesn't have to move. And then when you go to the 5, 7, A, C sharp, E, G, we don't include the fifth, because it's not there to have a 3-note triad and let the dominant seventh get 4 notes. It's just not fair. So we only generally give it the same amount of voices. So usually root, third, and seventh, because that determines the quality more easily. So if you have an A dominant seventh, which belongs to D major, we would do A, C sharp, G. Now, if you're going from D, F sharp A, to G, B, D, that D stays, A, C sharp, G, that D would just slide down to C sharp, because that's your voice leading. Now, you do have common tones in this case, because when you're going from G, B, D to A, C sharp, G, the middle note stays. That middle voice is your tenor or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes I assign names. My piano teacher used to call them George, Alex, Susie, whatever. And they have to stay in as linear a line as possible with as little movement as possible. So this example, I would have kids play that first of all, they have to analyze the chords. How do you analyze the chords? This is your theory. The upper note in the interval of the fourth names your triad. The upper note in the interval of the second names your seventh chord. At this point, we're talking about dominant seventh, so that's easy. When you're asking them to understand the chords, you have to ask them to sing the primary triads before they even get started. D, F sharp, E, G, B, D, A, C sharp, E, G. Right, so that comes in from the very beginning as well, singing. Because now they know what their primary triads are. They know D, F sharp, A is the 1 chord. They know G is 4 and A is 5. Because they sing it all the time. It's part of their reciting. If anybody wants some of my reciting lists or reciting recordings, because I sing those chord progressions all the time for kids, for like level 1 and above, so they're fluent in what their primary triads are in any given key. So now they know D is the 1 chord, G is the 4 chord, so they look, the upper note in the interval, the 4th in your 3rd measure is G. The upper note in the interval, the 2nd in your 5th measure is A, so it's your 5, 7. And then at the very end, you have a 5-finger pattern, which is actually a triad with passing tones, right? So now you have your rotten eggs in the middle. Okay, so one nice thing about sight reading a 4 chord is generally at this level, if you're playing, play the 1 chord in D major. Keep your eyes up here. Eyes up, both hands, both hands. And now play play the 1-4, 4 using the common tones with both hands. Okay, generally if you're going from the 1 to the 4, your melody is also going to be duplicating that. If you look in measure 3, for CM at this level, they're not going to have your right hand going off in a different direction. So if you're going from 1 to 4, if you just plunk out those chords, your melody will probably fit. Like look at measure 3,
Yeah.
right? Okay, now the hardest thing I think is going from the 4 chord to the 5-7. So play your 4 chord. The common tone is that middle note. In order to access that in your right hand, you have to restructure your fingering. Grab it from the 3rd finger to the 4th finger. So now we just sort of steal it a little bit with the 4th. Yeah, I wouldn't really skip that step though. I would go from the 4 chord, your 3rd finger's on G, now put your 4th finger on that G and now slither down. Finger substitution. Just say slither down because finger substitution sounds a little unfriendly to a little kid. Slithering is a much more fun concept. So yeah, the more ridiculous you can word things, the more fun it is. I have to tell you something. When I was a kid, my best friend and I used to walk home from school every day, and from the age of 8. And she also studied piano with my piano teacher, with the same teacher. Actually, my teacher's wife across the hall. So they were like, we had master classes together and everything. My favorite thing in the world was we had 2 pianos in my living room with sight reading Rachmaninoff piano concertos. We were so bad. So all we decided on was we're going to start and count out loud and we're going to get to the end at the same time. Now we had 2 piano versions, right? We were doing this all the time growing up. If we hit a right note, we're like, yes! We were so bad that we were literally rolling on the floor laughing. I can't tell you the cacophony, the noise that we made sight reading together, but somehow we started getting better and better. Why? Because we were fearless. We were joking. We had fun sight reading. We learned to laugh at our mistakes. I want kids to laugh when they're sight reading. I want them to try sight reading something that's so gloriously difficult that they sound ridiculous so they can laugh at themselves and just go, oh my gosh, it was so bad. And then try something easy and they go, oh, I hit some right notes and celebrate. If you don't include humor in sight reading, it's not going to be a passion. The more passionate you feel about it, the more you're going to want to do it. And I think the greatest sight readers are the ones who sight read all the time. Okay, so now we talked about D major, and you can see that on number 22 example, the last few measures, the right hand is almost an ascending scale. It just starts in F sharp, or if you look at the measure before, it's got the E, right? And you just remember to tuck your thumb under like you would a D major scale. Okay, so now play the chord progressions for me. The 1 chord, the 4, say the 5-7, and then the 1. Okay, so just want them to get fluent with it. It's so funny because, I think back different students, and I'm thinking back to Arya, Miriam's son, doing this exact example. He's like, I have to look at my hands. No, you don't understand, Mrs. Joanna. I must look at my hands. So I do this chord progressions with him, and he's going, oh, I actually can do this. Okay, and now he's sight read without looking at his hands. So once you point out, they know this stuff. They've been doing it in their technique forever. Okay, just watch the rest in the right hand. That's the important thing. So when you're counting, you have to be aware of everything. Okay, your dynamics, your floats, your chords. Go. Here's the 4 chord, so the right hand has to extend. Now we come back, slither back, right hand. And here's our scale. Watch the 8th rest, crescendo, and get softer. And if you missed the last note for any reason, just roll on the floor laughing because nobody's going to get upset. Right? Okay, that was very good. Thank you, Nara. Okay, so if you look at number 27, it's exactly the same, oh here, yeah, she's got it. It's exactly the same concept, right? So I would like all of you to call out the chord. So we're in A minor, so the first chord is obviously the 1 chord. What do we have in measure 2? I already wrote the Roman numerals above for you. It's a 5/7. The upper note in the interval, the second is E, and we already know the primary chord's an A1, A, C, D, F, A, E, G sharp, B, D, right? So the upper note in the interval, the second is E. Then we go back to the 1 chord. Here is a little bit of an exception to the rule. In measure 4, you do have your dominant 7th. But it's root 5th and 7th. The 3rd is in the right hand. So we have all 4 notes. And then if you look ahead, you've got the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5/7, the 1. What kind of cadence are we ending in? On number 27, what's the cadence? The last 2 chords?
Plagal.
It's a plagal cadence, yeah. Okay, if you look at number 25, the reason that I put that one next is now we start talking about escape tones and ever-increasing intervals. So if you look at this as G minor, the ever-increasing intervals, starting from the D, you're going down a second, down a third, down a fourth, down a fifth, and it even almost implies down a sixth, right? So it's coming down, what is it? Just, that's your melodic outline. So now, I want you to take a look. Oh, goodbye, ladies. I'm losing everybody. Okay, I want you to take a look at the chord on the 3rd measure from the end. F sharp, A, C, E flat. We didn't talk about that, but it's a really good time to start introducing diminished 7ths. A diminished 7th has 3 out of 4 notes in common with dominant 7ths. So the dominant 7th is D, F sharp, A, C, and the diminished 7th is F sharp, A, C, E flat. So it has 3 out of the 4. So it can take the place of the dominant 7. In this case, however, we have another plagal cadence. Can you see it in the last measure of number 25? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So now if you turn the page, the next one, number 21, the reason that I'm introducing this one is we have the 1 chord, and in measure 2 we have the dominant 7th. Can you see all that? In measure 4, you're back to the 1 chord. What do we have in the second line? What's the first chord? It's a 4 chord. And now we have a secondary dominant. So it's the first time we're introducing a secondary dominant. The upper note in the interval of the second names your 7th chord. So it's an F sharp dominant 7th. F sharp is the dominant of B. Okay, now before I go any further, if you want to know what dominant 7ths belong to, just look to B, E, A, D, gum candy fruit. B is the dominant E. E is the dominant A. A is the dominant D. D is the dominant gum. Gum's the dominant candy. Candy's the dominant fruit. Fruit's the dominant B flat. B flat's the dominant E flat. E flat's the dominant A flat, etc. So you can make it really a shortcut for students. So when you see that F sharp dominant 7, yeah, it's at the end of the B, E, A, D, gum candy fruit. It's the fruit sharp is the dominant of B. But it is. And B, it resolves to B dominant 7th on the 3rd to last measure in number 21. And B is the dominant of E, which is the key you're in. So you've got the 5/7 of 5 to 5/7 to 1. So I am going to point out number 14 because this one introduces secondary dominance. What's the most common chord progression in the world? What's the most common chord progression?
1, 4, 5, 5.
Okay, close. 2, 5, 1. 2, 5, 1. If you're in F major, it's gum candy fruit. There's one that's just as common, and it's 6, 2, 5, 1. So if you're in F major, it's D gum candy fruit, right? The 6th chord in F major is D minor. The 2 is gum, 5/7 is candy, and the 1 is fruit, right? Okay, so let's take a look. This one actually is in the key, number 14 in the key of D major. What's the 6th chord in D major? Come on, everybody knows this. It's B, right? 6th chord is B, so what's the 2 chord? And the 5/7? A, and the 1 is D. B, E, A, D, right? 6, 2, 5, 1, B, E, A, D. right? So if you use the BEAD gum candy fruit tool in your teaching for dominant sevenths and for circles of fifths, it's hugely helpful. So taking a look at number 14, we have secondary dominance. Okay, so I'm here at the piano. All right. And if you look in measure 3, the first chord of measure 3 is your 6th chord, right? The first chord of measure 4 is the 2 chord. The first chord of measure 5 is the 5/7. And the first chord of measure 6 is the 1 chord, correct? Okay. So what precedes the 6th chord in measure 3? Okay, you don't have an interval of a second right in front of you. But if you flip those notes around, you put the E and the F sharp together, now you know the upper note in the interval, the second into dominant 7 is F sharp 7, which is the dominant of your 6. So 5/7 of 6 to 6. What's the next chord? The second chord in measure 3. Again, flip those notes around, put the B and the A together, so you have an interval of a second. What's the upper note in the second? B. And B is the dominant of? B is the dominant of?
E.
E. So the next chord is your 2. So what have we got so far? We've got the 5/7 of 6 to 6. The 5/7 of 2 to 2. What's the next chord? After the 2 chords, starting on B4, or 1, 2, 2. So the second half of measure 4. The last chord of measure 4. What is it? Create an interval of a second. The E and the D. Put them together, the E and the D. So the upper note in the interval of the second is E. E is the dominant of A, which is the 5. Now, 5 just becomes 5/7, which becomes 1. Put it all together. 5/7 of 6 to 6. 5/7 of 2 to 2. 5/7 of 5 to 5. To 5/7 to 1. Oh, sorry, to 1. The next one is also 5/7. What do we have here? What is that 5/7? Okay, if you have a 5/7, a dominant 7 that's built on the tonic, it looks like a tonic chord, but it's a dominant 7, just a rule of thumb, it's always 5/7 of 4. It just is. If you see a 5/7, it's built on the tonic, just go for it. 5/7 of 4, right? Okay, so there's the 5/7 of 4, and there's your 4. Okay, now what do we have here? I'm delving into something a little bit more advanced now, advanced theory. So this is, I'm trying to jump ahead just to give you guys some sneak peeks at sight reading and theory, right? Okay, this chord is built a major third below your tonic, B flat. It's got an augmented 6th, right? So it's got a root, a major third, an augmented 4th, and an augmented 6th. What is it? It's got an accent, French 6th, right? It's the French 6th, the augmented 6th chords, right? If you need a refresher on augmented 6, just remember, built a major third below the tonic. B flat is a major third below D. It also has a major third above it, and then an augmented 6th above the root. So just a bare bones augmented 6th chord in the key of D would be B flat, D, G sharp. That's called an Italian 6th, right? If you add the augmented 4th, it's the French 6th. If you add a perfect 5th above it, it would be a German 6th, right? So I always tell kids, okay, this is the bare bone, the Italian. French has an accent, an augmented 4th is an accent. And German is more traditional, so it's the perfect 5th. Right? The interesting thing is, it sounds an awful lot like a B flat dominant 7, right? B flat, D, F, A flat, which would go to A, E flat major, right? But this one generally goes to 1, 6, 4, 5, 7, 1. So this one goes to the 1, 6, 4, 1 in the second inversion. It's a glorious chord, which goes to 5, 7 to 1. Now, I just threw that one in because I thought you guys might want a little bit of a review on some of the more advanced theory concepts, secondary dominance, augmented 6th chords, diminished seventh chords, which can be used in place of a dominant seventh chord. Yeah. So now, questions. You've got to have questions. Yeah.
So, let's say this number 14 is for what level?
Oh, I think it's level 9, isn't it? Well, maybe it's an earlier level in the CM book, but I would say level 9 for your theory concepts, for your study.
The student actually sees these things.
I teach it all the time, right? So like everybody knows that B is the dominant, E is the dominant, A is, right? So we always look for 6, 2, 5, 1, and then we talk about the 5 of the 6 to 6, the 5 of the 2 to 2, the 5 of the 5 to 5, because it's important to understand that, you know, it's so simple. We just really have to speak the language, and then we can understand music that we're playing. We're not just playing beautiful notes or beautiful harmonies. We can understand it, right? Everything is understandable, unless it's contemporary. And then, you know, I think, who was it who pointed out? I think it was Rosemary Carswell. Somebody asked me, well, if it's contemporary, if it's 20th, 21st century, and it's like 12 tone, well then, there are other things to take into consideration. It's the analysis of the pattern, right? And how that pattern's treated, or the interval reading, right? So it's all analyzable, it is. Or sometimes if you're looking at contemporary music, it just might be something is written backwards, or it's up a minor third, up a minor third, up a minor third, or it's just everything all combined. And it's up to us to be detectives and to figure out how it was constructed. So any questions though? Like anything I can have?
What to do with students who refuse to count out loud? They want to count in their head, but usually it's
Candy. They get candy. If they count, they get no candy. Well, no, they'll do it for candy. They'll do it for candy. Yeah, it's a requirement. It's not an option. You have to count. Yeah, and then also I would say that if you start them out with the singing before they're even counting, they're singing notes, right? And that's a whole other separate subject, because the note reading lecture, I gave that at CSUN when Nara was there in Ed Francis's class. I gave a lecture on note reading, and just, you know, the notes all have stories for being on the staff, the reason they are where they are. And so kids learn to sing. I don't even care if they're singing in the right key, but as long as they're tonally accurate. Like if it's a C major, but they're singing in B flat because their voice just, but they're singing the notes, unless they have perfect pitch. That's a different story. So for AP music theory also, I teach AP music theory, so sight singing is such a key component. And I always find they're comfortable key that they're comfortable singing in, and if they don't have perfect pitch, just use the same key all the time. So they have to count. I think you start them by singing first, because once you've broken that barrier where they're not so self-conscious, then they'll count. I guess that's it, right? I mean, I tried to cover as much as I could, and I didn't really cover a lot, just
That's great.
the bare bones. So
These were great.
it's okay.